guys, this is Xenu, and you're listening to Anti Moonboy News. Yeah, we got some music now, how about that? But yeah, we got a good one for you today, folks. We're going to be talking about the Kraken delisting, the Monero Defense Fund. Apparently Robot has a girlfriend now, so we're going to be meeting her. But first, we got some super chats. If you want to donate, you can go to xmrchat.com/Xenu. The first one is from MC Lover, who donates 0.4 XMR. That's a big one. Thank you so much, MC Lover. I appreciate it. And he says, glad to see the Xenu media empire growing. Please don't ever become an egotistical shithead like every other crypto grifter. Shoutouts to XMR Gen and Monero Chan for life. Yeah, the Xenu media empire is indeed growing. I'm nearing 1,000 subs on YouTube, so it's pretty exciting. Starting to see some momentum. A lot of people enjoying my content. And yeah, last week actually, I debuted my chat room on Matrix Only. I didn't announce it on Twitter. It's buried in my podcast. But yeah, if you want to join the chat room, you can go to antimoonboy.com/secret room for a link. And yeah, we had like 30 people join. It was pretty awesome. So yeah, we're starting to build a nice community here of anti-moonboys. You know, the type of people that are very against the speculative moonboy, culture that has built over time. And rather, we're here for the digital cash aspect. And yeah, we may make some profit along the way, but we're here for the idealism, right? That's the anti-moonboy spirit. And I do think that this type of mindset is going to grow over time because you can only promise, Lambos for everybody for so long. Eventually, the music is going to stop, right? So kind of bringing things back to its roots. Yeah, I think this is really the direction cryptocurrency will swing back to, and the kind of craze of getting rich, I think, will kind of die down, hopefully. I mean, the thing is, I expect during whatever next bear market comes that my channel is still going to keep growing because, where else are we going to go, right? So during that time period, it's going to be nice to have that. So yeah, I don't think crypto grifter is in the cards for me. If I ever talk about another cryptocurrency, it'll be just about something I'm interested in. And I do think that type of mindset will grow over time where, now instead of treating cryptocurrency like, number go up, we're all getting rich. Instead, we're treating it seriously. And my dream is that on, YouTube, for example, we'll have like a nice little community of content creators that aren't treating cryptocurrency like number go up. Inspired by how Linux and that all those content creators have grown over time. Why don't we have something like that for crypto? Kind of like a pushback of people treating this seriously. So at least that's the intention. So anyways, I appreciate the donation again. Yeah, and shout out to the XMR General. That's where I got started with Monero. And Monero Chan for life, I agree. We need more artwork, though. We definitely need more Monero Chan artwork. I'm doing the best I can, contributing to that. So if you are an artist, whether you're making your own or using AI, we could use your work to continue this meme. So anyways, yeah, thanks again, MC Lover. Appreciate that. Next up, we have an anonymous donation of 0.1 XMR. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And he says, Xenu, my question to you relates to precious metals. You've mentioned them before and was wondering if you have any advice for accumulating them non-KYC and avoiding scams. Keep it up. P.S. I love the robot skits. Please never stop them. All right. Well, thank you very much for that donation. And stick around because later Robot will be showing his girlfriend off on the show. So, but yeah, regarding your question, Precious metals. Yeah. So if you want to get non-KYC precious metals, your best solution to that would be finding a local coin shop and buying them with cash. Super simple. I guess not every store does this, but in my experience, this is kind of how it works. Unless you're buying like a lot. Like I think they have a threshold of $10,000 worth. Then they have to take your information. This might change though, depending on where you are and what store you go to. But yeah, you just go in with cash, and usually it's a handshake, no questions asked, at least in my experience. So that's what I would recommend to you. And also, like, local coin shops are pretty cool. The people there are generally based. And yeah, you can go and get some coins, get some maybe silver eagles, or I don't know, some gold or whatever. And, you know, people talk down about precious metals, but let me tell you, it's different when you're holding it. You know, it's when you're holding an element, it's pretty cool. It's different. It's a game changer. You know, clinking silver coins. If you know, you know. So yeah, I would find a local coin shop, and you know, if they're asking you for ID, you can leave. It's not like you can get arrested or anything. But yeah, I've never experienced that. Alternatively, you can buy precious metals with crypto. Now, you would have to give away your address, so maybe you're not interested in doing that. But I have purchased gold with Monero before, and it's pretty straightforward. I think the one I used was Velt Crypto. Check Monerica. It should be on there. There's probably other websites as well. But yeah, it's really straightforward. So, I mean, that's not as non-KYC as buying with cash. That's a superior option, but that's also an alternative, and it's a good way to spend your Monero. So hopefully that answers your question, man. I appreciate the donation. All right, next up, we have a donation from Michael Saylor. He gives 0.011 XMR. Thank you very much. And he says, enjoy. This is from my personal stack. Wink, wink. Thank you very much, Saylor. I know you've had a kind of a rough week. Yeah, MicroStrategy or strategy, excuse me. Yeah, they had a kind of a rough week with their stock losing some faith from their supporters. Also with Bitcoin, kind of struggling. We'll see what happens with that. Yeah, I wonder like how Michael Saylor would hype up Monero, you know? Monero is a black hole of privacy. It is the elixir of anonymity, pure encrypted digital energy, obfuscating any origin or any indication that it was ever used. Something like that. He would probably say something like that. Monero is a black hole of privacy. Yeah. I don't know, man. You're going to look at the past like 4 or 5 years and how many times he's like headlined these conferences and how many people in Bitcoin have kissed this guy's ass. And the entire time he was just a fraud. And so I think that's going to be the maturation of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, is getting rid of people like Michael Saylor. Maybe it'll never happen. I don't know. But when that does happen, cryptocurrency will finally reach the point where it's being taken seriously as a worldwide currency. But until that happens, you know, we're going to have to listen to Michael Saylor talk about digital energy, a swarm of encrypted cyber hornets, you know, that type of shit. And yeah, hopefully that ends soon. Anyways, thanks again for the donation, Michael Saylor. I appreciate it. And we got a donation from Leo, who gives 0.1 XMR. Thanks, Leo, man. Appreciate it, as always. And he says, Another interesting read on the state, Socialism Under the Microscope. The parallels with the West are quite obvious. Just some 3-hour listening, fairly short but eye-opening book. Keep up the great show, brother. Yeah, so I looked up Socialism Under the Microscope. I did find like 10 minutes of it on YouTube. So I listened to that. It seems pretty cool. Seems like it kind of goes through the history of socialism and, talking about what it actually is and stuff. Yeah, you really just have generations of people that have now been born into a system which basically just hypes itself up. So like when you're going to school and stuff, you're kind of trained to accept this idea that the government should solve everything. And you have people who go their entire lives who kind of just don't think outside the box and think, yeah, maybe this is not the best idea. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's very safe. It's very safe to just kind of trust the process and go along with it. And like the much more dangerous option is to say, hey, maybe we should switch things up. So I understand why people don't like to think of it in that way. But I mean, at least in the United States, you have two parties, right? You have Democrats and Republicans. It's the same thing. It's that Office meme. It's the same picture, really. You have they're both pro-war, right? They're both pro-taxes, pro-spending, pro-Israel, pro-surveillance. It's just like very little differences. I mean, Trump took office. Like, is there any difference in the amount of people illegally entering the country? No. Like, there's no difference. You have some more, you have some news headlines that are indicating as such, but, you have people still coming over the border. That's not stopping, So, yeah, what they do is they kind of highlight these fringe issues, and those are really what you're voting for. And half the time, it's not even what the president does. So the whole thing is just kind of ridiculous. Trump doesn't control abortion, but that is like basically how like a sizable portion of our country votes is just based on like abortion. It's crazy, but that's literally how the United States is right now. But like, yeah, you would think that people would be concerned about, the deficit that we're running every year, inflation, and people are concerned about that, but it's really easy to distract those people. Or I should say it's just really easy to distract people in general. And so then nothing really changes. And things kind of just get worse and worse. And yeah, I don't even know, like, I don't even think we're going to ever have anything called socialism. We're just going to have what we have now, but the decay will just be more and more noticeable over time, especially if you like take a step back and like look 10 years ago. If we take a step back and look 10 years in the future, it's just going to be even worse, but we're going to kind of gradually get there. It's kind of like I have like friends and family who are like democratic socialists, like the Bernie Sanders types. And they unironically want higher taxes to make like that is gonna like solve things. Like if we give the government more money, that's gonna fix things. Like, no, it's not. The government's just gonna become even more corrupt. Like that's all it's gonna change. And problematically too, like I don't think the solutions on the other side are that much better. They're arguably even worse. So anyways, that's why I'm tuned out, and I kind of just focus on being independent, and I encourage other people to do the same. So anyways, thanks Leo for that donation, and yeah, check out that book, I guess. All right, next up, we have a donation from Tom Monerist, who gives 0.25 XMR. Damn. We got some big ones this week. Thank you, Tom. And he says, hi, Xenu. Thanks for the Monero Defense Fund initiative. I have a question. How do you feel about Kraken delisting in Canada? I'm in Europe and XMR has been delisted from all major exchanges. However, I feel the community seems to be stronger than ever. Yeah, Tom, I think you said it right there. Like the community is stronger than ever. And you know, I'm not in Europe right now, but like I know a lot of people from Europe, and okay, big deal. They can't get Monero through a KYC exchange. There's other ways. You know, I mean, delisting it is not making it illegal, and that's not to say they're going to, you know, they're not going to try to make Monero illegal in the future, but like it's trivial to get Monero. Like, I didn't make it this week, but I am going to have a video on doing a coin swap. And that's just like a super easy process that like, you know, has become very popular because it's, yeah, super easy. And so anyways, yeah, regarding the Kraken delisting in Canada, I mean, we have delisting fatigue. That's really what it is. The Monero dumped for like an hour or something, and then people just bought it back up. Like, who gives a shit? Okay. They're just the next in a long line of exchanges who have delisted Monero. We're used to it at this point. I remember when Europe, Kraken delisted Monero in all of Europe, and the reaction was equally as muted. It's kind of like, oh, okay. It's like we already expected that to happen. So, you know, I do think though that eventually they will delist Monero for the United States. And this is like the one major holdout, but I think it's inevitable. And my guess is they're going to wait until the moment of maximum pain to do this. So probably in the bear market. But like, if you are like pro Monero, like that's the buying opportunity, right? Like that's the slurp up the cheapies opportunity, you know? And if you're like freaking out about this and you're concerned, don't hold Monero. You know, this is a very risky asset. And we're going to be dealing with a ton of regulation stuff going forward. You know, they may make Monero illegal to hold. It could happen. Like I've seen crazier things already. Now I don't think they can do that, but like they're basically going after like any type of wallet that's non-custodial. They're going after like any type of transaction that's non-KYC approved, untraceable. They want to lock everything down. So it's I think that means that they're eventually going to go after Monero in different ways. So we're definitely going to be having to deal with this more and regulation concerns and stuff. And so because of that, the price of Monero will get impacted. So yeah, these delistings, I think for most cryptocurrencies would be like devastating. But like for Monero, it's kind of just, it's actually giving it prestige because other cryptocurrencies aren't being delisted as much as Monero. And it kind of emboldens it. And it makes it look stronger. So yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that the community seems stronger than ever because I agree, it is stronger than ever. So if we do see like a Monero bull run, kind of built on it, you know, on it being the most private cryptocurrency, and you know, privacy is this thing that people want with digital surveillance growing. If we do see that happen, you're going to see actually the reverse happen, where Monero will start to get listed just because it will be profitable for exchanges to list it. So they'll say, you know what, these regulations, they don't really mean anything. Like we can still list Monero. And that's kind of the argument too. Like if you actually read these regulations that, you know, these exchanges are following, they're like very vague and they can be argued against. And eventually you're going to have an exchange say, you know what, we're just going to list this because I don't like agree with delisting it. Because I think it does follow these rules or whatever. And then the flip side will happen where you will have Monero be listed on exchanges and the price will actually go up more because of it. I actually can see that happening. And I've also mentioned before too that it's actually like a good thing that Monero is listed on KYC exchanges from the perspective of law enforcement because it makes tracing Monero much easier. And you can watch Attack of the Poison Outputs where I go into a lot of detail about this, but really how Monero is traced is KYC metadata. So if you don't have Monero on KYC exchanges, it makes it much harder. So It's kind of surprising to me that this is kind of being neglected, but I guess the solution that feds have kind of come up with is to just bury Monero as much as possible, which is, I guess, having an impact, at least on the price, because it is not pumping like, other cryptocurrencies. But will that change? I don't know, right? We could be here another decade and Monero is kind of just slowly kind of, losing value relative to Bitcoin. But we may have to face that reality. So anyways, thanks again for that donation, Tom Monerist. I appreciate it. And lastly, we have a donation from Sheldon, who gives 0.015 XMR. Thanks, Sheldon. And he says, win I2P video and Attack of the Poison Output series. Also, I wonder what kind of solutions the big brains of Monero will develop in response to the recent mining attacks. I'd like to see a multi-pronged solution where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Well, thank you very much for that donation, Sheldon. And yeah, I know I've been putting this off. I meant to have Attack of the Poison Outputs return in August, but then I had these requests to make user-friendly videos, and with the rate that the channel is growing, I'm probably going to stick with that for the time being, but I will have an I2P video eventually. Because, okay, here are the videos I do have planned. I have a video about coin swaps. I'm going to make that. And then I wanted to make a video on RitoSwap. Those are like in high demand right now. So I'm going to make those first. After I make those two, I don't have a video planned, so I will consider making an I2P video. But yeah, I mean, if you've watched the tour video, it's basically the same thing. You just instead plug in the I2P stuff. But I will make a video on that. So maybe I'll have that in September. We can try to plan that. Hopefully I don't break my promise. Yeah, and regarding your comments on the multi-pronged solution, I completely agree. Where it's going to be a lot of incremental things. And I think a lot of the developers in Monero are in agreement on that. I really do not like this idea of introducing a brand new, scheme, this finality later stuff. I mean, I'll listen to it, but I think that's going to get screwy with, our block rewards, our mining network, etc. The best thing we can do is just harden what we have right now and, make little incremental improvements that don't really disrupt what really is a great feature of Monero, which is RandomX. It has taken a hit in its reputation, but let's just introduce RandomX version 2. This is a perfect time to just take what we know and improve it. So that's the mindset we should have, in my opinion. Anyways, those are the super chats. Thank you to everyone who donated. If you want to donate and appear on the show next week, you can send a super chat to xmrchat.com/Xenu. Yeah, so now for some channel updates. I have music now. The opening theme is Robotussin by Flying Lotus. The song is super chill, good vibes. I thought it was perfect. And it's not copyrighted. So that's why I chose it. Now, the idea here is every month or so, I'm going to feature a different artist. I'm like a little undecided as to whether or not I want to change the opening theme each week. I think I want to keep it the same. I really like the song that I chose. But I think for the outro, the outro song will be different every week. And for the first month, we're going to do Flying Lotus, who is one of my favorite musicians. He produced a lot of the music for the bumper music for Adult Swim. So if you feel a similar vibe, that's why. But we're going to, for the first month, use his music for the outro. And then in the future, we will find other artists to highlight on this channel. And the reason for this, I don't know. It's fun. And I have a good taste in music. So it's something else. Another little flavor that the show will have that will separate it from all the other podcasts out there. I mean, obviously, you can just skip the outro because it's just going to be music. But it's a little something that I think people will enjoy. Other channel updates. Again, I'm going to have a video this week on coin swaps. upcoming video on Rito Swap. And that's about it with that. T-shirts, go to antimoonboy.com/merch. And I have 2 t-shirts there. I'm still trying to sell these before I order any new ones. You can get both t-shirts for $50 plus shipping and handling. So they're really nice shirts, high quality. All my reviews on XMart Bazaar are 5 out of 5. Everyone loves them, so check those out. All right, so let's keep the show rolling. And we're now going to talk about the Monero Defense Fund, which was an initiative that I took up about a week ago that's been, for the most part, very successful. There's been some good news and bad news with it. So I'm going to kind of break down how the past week and a half has gone with that, which has been kind of crazy. So yeah, what happened was like a week ago, I kind of impulsively put out this tweet, saying, hey, listen, if people donate to this address, I will use that money for renting mining rigs to mine Monero, which is exactly what I did. And I was expecting only like 2 Monero max, maybe 5. I ended up getting like 30 Monero donated. Like, it was crazy. Which, I'll be honest with you guys, it makes me a little uncomfortable. Just because, like, people are just entrusting me with a lot of money, and I don't know. It just makes me feel a little uncomfortable. But you know what? For the better of Monero, I did it. And yeah, quite literally, there's no rules, right? And what I'm kind of doing is, in collaboration with a couple friends I have in the Monero Research Lab, if there's a period of time where, Cubic has a lot of hash rate and maybe they're starting to do some reorgs, I then buy a lot of hash rate. And that's kind of what I've been doing. So last week, actually, I was wrapping up recording for my podcast. And then I started getting like text messages from, well, not text messages, but DMs, I should say, from people in the Monero Research Lab. And they're like, yeah, Xenu, throw what you got at Cubic right now. And I was like, oh shit. So I had to stop my show and like run onto mining rig rentals, and I bought a bunch of hash rate. It ended up being a false alarm. It looks like they were faking their hash rate last week, but this is kind of a fluid situation, this past week on Thursday. And by the way, for those who don't know, what Cubic is doing is they're doing a 24-hour mining marathon on Thursdays, Saturdays, and Mondays. Okay. So, last Monday, nothing really happened, but I did buy a lot of hash rate at one point in time because it was looking troubling. And the Monero Research Lab, they were like, yeah, they probably do have a lot of hash rate. It ended up being a false alarm, but it was precautionary. Then on Thursday, they had a decent amount of hash rate, and they started to do reorgs. So, I mean, I'm in the workshop quite literally watching this happen, and I just bought a bunch of hash rate again. And I actually think it did have an impact because, I bought the hash rate right around when they were doing a bunch of reorgs, and then they kind of tapered off. Now, maybe I'm just kind of exaggerating the usefulness of this fund, but I do think it had an impact. Now, there are a couple problems, though. And so on Saturday, we had a Monero community meeting. Okay, so I encourage people to attend these. There are various meetings that happen throughout the week. And at the meeting, I brought up, hey, guys, I don't want to run this fund by myself. I'm looking for people who want to help out, looking for feedback from the community, etc. And so a couple of things were brought to my attention, and this has also been discussed in the Monero Research Lab meetings as well. The first thing, I might not actually be having an impact because I might just be buying hash rate that was already mining outside of Cubic. So for example, I might be buying somebody who was mining on support XMR. And so then I'm taking that support XMR hash rate and pointing it towards Monero Ocean in this case, which is the pool I'm using. Is that actually having an impact on things? Well, no, right? Because, in that situation, I wouldn't actually be drawing hash rate away from cubic. So the ideal situation is that I would be pulling hash rate away from cubic specifically. But like, how do we do that? You know what I mean? There's really no way of doing that. So it was suggested that I only rent hash rate that is currently idle, which I have been doing for the most part. But that should be my focus. So if I go on mining rig rentals and I see hash rate that isn't being used, or like a mining rig that's idle, I should buy that hash rate, because then the chances of that mining rig having an impact are greater because it's not actively working at that moment. So I think that's a pretty good idea. So I'm going to do that next time I do rent hash rate. So that's one thing. Another thing too was there is some research going on to try to figure out ways of like actually buying like web servers to mine hash rate. And so there's preliminary research going into that as well. There was another guy who's been cataloging he's been like monitoring mining rig rentals and making all these charts, monitoring what's going on, trying to find patterns and stuff. So there's definitely work being done here. That being said, right now I have, let's see. So currently I have about $3,000 left for the fund. And just to kind of give you guys a quick rundown of my strategy, basically what I'm doing is I'm only renting hash rate in periods of time where cubic is actively doing reorgs and like threatening the network. In that case, then I buy hash rate, and I try to hit like 100 mega hash, and I do that in bursts of 3 hours. I think that's the best bang for our buck situation, because on the first day, what I did is I bought like 24 mega hash for the entire day. It's just a waste of money, which I now kind of realize. It's better to just rent hash in those short bursts if at all possible. And additionally, too, now I'm going to focus on renting hash for idle rigs. So if there's a rig that's actively mining, ignore those. So it's not really the best solution, I suppose, but it's something. And, I kind of brought this up, though, to the various people in the research lab. Like people want to help out here. It's not like people want to like lay down for this problem. People want to actively help. So I think overall the defense fund has been a great success, and it wasn't needed yesterday. Saturday came and went, and cubic was hardly mining. So maybe I needed to do something today. I'm recording this on Sunday, but I don't know. As always, I will be listening to the Monero Research Lab for their guidance. If I get a couple DMs saying, hey, Zeno, you might want to buy hash rate now, we'll buy some hash rate and defend the network. All right. So, yeah, overall, though, definitely a success. I'm pretty happy with how things went. And furthermore, I do think that, with more research and stuff, we can eventually transition this into like a community kind of decentralized initiative. I don't know how much interest there is for that to like help out, but I'm going to give it like a couple more weeks. And if this thing kind of fizzles out, then I'm going to have some decisions, because I'm going to have some Monero left over. I mean, I don't know. I might just donate it to different CCSs or something. I'm not really sure. People did give me a bunch of Monero to help the network, so I'm gonna use that to help the network. And no, I did not take any of it. I'm receiving donations to this channel and stuff. Like I wouldn't steal any Monero. That being said, though, like why I want to decentralize this, fund is because I don't want people just throwing a bunch of money at me, because like it just makes me uncomfortable. That's my thoughts on the matter. So we'll see what happens with the fund going forward. Hopefully, it won't be needed that much more, and we can then transition this to more of a community thing. All right. So before we get to the news, we're going to take a little break because Robot has requested some time on this program to introduce his new girlfriend. Now, I haven't actually had the time to see who the lucky lady is, so this will be a surprise for me as well. All right, you can come in. Yep. All right, he's coming in, and he's carrying the vacuum cleaner. All right. So we'll get you on the mic here. Okay.
Beep boop. Hello. This is my girlfriend, the Stratos Upright Vacuum Cleaner AX3000. She is a top-rated model, known for versatility and ability to handle various floor types, including hardwood, tile, vinyl, and different carpet pile heights. Beep boop.
Yeah, I think my mom bought that for me a couple years ago.
Beep boop. When we have conversations, I can't help but be enamored by her angelic voice. Beep boop.
Oh, really? She can talk? Huh. Well, how about this? Let's have her say something on the air.
Beep boop. It would be her pleasure. Beep boop.
Yeah, I don't really know what else I was expecting there.
Beep boop. Yesterday we spoke for hours about the intricacies of electrohydraulic servo valves. Beep boop.
Okay, we gotta get back to the news here, so thank you for joining, Robot. It was really nice seeing you.
Beep boop. Thank you. Beep boop.
See you, Robot. And see you, Vacuum. All right, time for the news. We're starting off with Veridise. Now, with the whole Cubic situation, one of the storylines that we've seen develop is that it's very obvious how many people are just reading headlines and then reacting to said headlines. Now, we already know this, right? If you've been a warm body for the past, 15 years, you've understood what the phrase clickbait means. But it's really disappointing, though, to see a lot of people fall for the Monero was successfully 51% attacked meme. But what's worse, though, because I mean that's expected. We're expecting, the various influencers out there to make fools of themselves. But what's really disappointing, though, is this auditing firm Veridise. They retweeted this post about Monero that was totally sensationalist, completely inaccurate by this guy. I don't even know this guy's name. I've seen him on Twitter before. And he just completely misunderstood everything that happened with Monero. And to be clear, with this whole Cubic thing, we are taking this seriously, but this is not the end of Monero. Okay, and Monero was not successfully 51% attacked. There was a successful selfish mining attack. But, the effects of this aren't really that much other than us, realizing, okay, we need to harden random X here because these attacks can get worse over time. And they can get worse from, more, or from adversaries with a lot more money to spend, right? If anything, this Cubic thing is a good stress test for us. We're not pretending this isn't an issue. I mean, okay, there are some people in Monero who are saying, oh, nothing happened. I think those people are being ridiculous too. But this was something, right? And so anyway, this Veridise company, they retweeted this completely inaccurate, sensationalist garbage tweet, right? And that tweet was made by Veridise, who we've hired to audit full chain membership proofs. Ugh. Now, they did tweet out an apology. They said it was a mistake. And to be honest with you, I do believe them. These companies, they hire on social media some fucking intern who has no idea what's going on. They're just looking at the most popular stories of the week, and they don't understand, right? So what will likely happen is whoever was running the social media thought they were tweeting out a story that was reputable because all these other freaking publications also talked about it incorrectly, right? Which is, the part of the issue with the media. It's a circular citation racket, essentially. They're all wrong. And they kind of threw more gas on the fire. And so they also tweeted it. But anyway, they did apologize for it, at least through a tweet. I don't know if they put out a statement. They really should. Because it's just inexcusable. As it is, Monero has suffered a lot over the past couple weeks with this freaking, situation, where we're kind of fighting on all fronts here. And really we are losing, or for a period of time, we were losing this propaganda war, mostly because we don't have a freaking CEO, right? We're decentralized. So it's been kind of frustrating to deal with this whole thing. And it really sucks when you have this auditing firm that has very smart people behind it who's helping full chain membership proofs develop, and then they're piling on. So yeah, I mean, the smarter people behind Veridise, they have probably no idea this tweet was even made. But it is, annoying to go on Twitter and see this and just face palm again, I think pretty much everyone in Monero did a collective face palm when they saw that. So yeah, that's all I got on the Veridise situation. It seems like it was kind of a nothing burger, but embarrassing nonetheless. Next up, we got Dero, and this is probably going to be the last time I'm talking about Dero, because the Derolytics Twitter account has essentially announced their closure. And to finish things off, they released a report about a sophisticated inflation exploit done by none other than Captain Dero, who had mysteriously disappeared about a year ago. They have a whole report on their website, derolytics.com. So we're going to open it here. I encourage people to look at this. They call it the Dero heist, how Captain stole 8.3 million through an inflation exploit and systematically destroyed the Dero ecosystem. On October 17, 2022, someone executed a sophisticated inflation exploit on the blockchain, on the Dero blockchain, creating 2.2 million Dero, worth 9.17 million at the time. And they created out of nothing, and then they laundered approximately 8.3 million over 21 months through 242 different exchange accounts. Through comprehensive blockchain forensics enabled by our de-anonymization of the Dero chain, which, if you weren't aware, they had already done. This Derolytics team have been basically destroying and pwning Dero for the past couple months. Through blockchain forensics, they present compelling evidence that Captain Dero, the founder and sole core developer, was the perpetrator of the massive theft. So they have a whole breakdown of everything and a timeline, and yeah, there's a lot here. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You guys can check that out if you want, but there it is. Nail in the coffin. Yeah, I wonder where Tech Leaks is. Shout out to that pussy. But yeah, if you go back like a year, when Luke Parker pwned them initially, there was this where is the captain in this situation? Because he was the only guy running this project. And yeah, I speculated this too. He probably stole a bunch of Dero. Why he dumped on you guys? Where is the guy? And yeah, people got owned on this. Okay, let's move on. I got an article here from The Rage. Bank of International Settlements paper proposes self-KYC for non-custodial wallets. Oh boy. Economists at the Bank of International Settlements, BIS, often referred to as the central bank of central banks, have published a paper for a new approach to anti-money laundering compliance for crypto assets. The Economist suggests to leverage the provenance and history of any particular unit or balance of a crypto asset to implement a risk scoring scheme with on and off ramps that would exclude any asset that has ever passed through a no KYC wallet from being accepted by regulated entities. With this approach, the BIS aims to create a culture of duty of care among crypto market participants, leading users of non-custodial wallets to not accept no KYC coins and opt for KYCing their own coins voluntarily. While customer verification can be performed at points of contact with the conventional monetary system, e.g. by crypto exchanges, once claims move to unhosted wallets on the permissionless blockchain itself, the transactions are out of the reach of conventional forms of intervention. By using public transaction histories, a diagnostic AML compliance score could be referenced in any further interventions by authorities when crypto assets, including stablecoins, are presented for conversion to fiat currency at the off-ramps. So yeah, the article goes on to talk about compliance scores and, self-policing these things, and it's disastrous, as you would imagine. We're heading towards KYC only, KYC approved wallets, custodial only wallets. This is really what they want. And it really, all this is going to do is it's going to push the people who want to use peer-to-peer cash. It's going to push them to Monero. That's really what all this is doing. Why would you even bother using Bitcoin as peer-to-peer cash at that point? And as it is, people don't want to use Bitcoin for peer-to-peer cash. They'd rather just hold on to it like a tech stock. And yeah, I do think, like, if we were to look at Lightning Network and take that seriously, all of those companies are going to comply with this, like every single one. So, people can talk about, oh, this is more private than this. Well, if you're funneling people through centralized applications, all of them are going to comply with whatever BS AML compliance score thing they throw in front of them, And in Lightning Network, most people are using centralized applications and services. Obviously, with Monero, it's a little different because it's open source and decentralized, but there are still ways that this can be put onto Monero as well. So yeah, this is just a paper. This is nothing set in stone, but I do think this is the direction that they're heading in. We're already also seeing that with Europe as well. KYC mandated through everything. And these compliance scores with tokens and stuff. There's a whole graph here too. It's ridiculous. Anyways. Okay, next up we have a post by Fluffy Pony about detective mining. This is a strategy that he brought up that essentially is a way to prevent selfish miners from making orphan blocks. And I guess it would actually be pretty simple to implement. And so it says here, selfish pools must distribute jobs that tell their workers which parent to mine on. These jobs reveal the pool's private tip via the previous block hash. A detective miner subscribes to those jobs, detects when the leaked previous hash does not match the public tip, and immediately mines a counter child block on top of the selfish pool's hidden parent. Publishing that child forces the selfish pool to reveal its private block or lose it, repeatedly cutting off the attacker's lead and eroding their advantage. The original paper models and simulates this dynamic and shows the attacker's extra revenue disappear as detective adoption grows. So basically, to kind of just very briefly summarize this, because we're kind of running out of time here anyways, and I encourage people to check out this on GitHub. It's the Research Lab issue 140. Yeah, this is just another thing that we can use to improve RandomX. And so right now, and I'm not sure if a lot of people know this, the Monero Research Lab, they can actually see when Cubic is selfish mining. So like, for example, they'll say, yeah, they're about 6 blocks ahead of where we are now, which means that they have a reorg that's, 6 blocks long. So they can actually see that. Now, I don't know if they're doing what this is saying. I don't know how they're able to figure that out. Maybe they are actually doing this. I don't know. But they're able to figure out where they are. And by doing that, they can see if they are doing or attempting reorgs. So this is a pretty intuitive way. I guess this would make this as a more... this would be more set in the overall architecture of mining. But yeah, this seems like pretty logical to me. But anyway, there's a lot of debate in the comments here. And trying to explain all this in podcast form would be kind of pointless. It's pretty complicated. So I encourage people to read it. But I do think it is being discussed. And of course, something like this can also be fought against. I'm sure there's countermeasures for something like this. But this is something that I think can help harden the protocol. And that in and of itself seems like a good idea. The last thing I want to talk about in this episode was a tweet by Tuxedo. And he says that, quote, Zcash lost the privacy war in part because it has no aura. Monero is the only one that has any motion. he's right. But why is he right? Why is this the case? And it really comes down to the ideology, the beating heart of cypherpunk ideology that comes from Monero, that is in Zcash, but it's not committing in Zcash. Because Zcash and projects like Zcash, they don't want to go all the way. They think that they can hold hands with the government and collaborate. They like to have an open dialogue with the feds. The other week I saw the guy who's in charge of Zcash, and I forget his name. And he was like, this is what he said. Well, I don't have it in front of me, but he said something like, I've had many off-the-record conversations with U.S. officials, and Monero hasn't come up once. And he said that in a way that's like Monero doesn't matter to them. That's what he thought. But it's just like, dude, why are you bragging about talking to feds? You know what I mean? It's just they're not getting it, right? And I can tell you right now, the average normie doesn't give a shit about white papers. They don't care. And people on darknet markets are normies, for what it's worth. A lot of them are. They don't really know what's going on. What they look for is actual usage. And Monero is used on darknet markets. And that is a proof of concept. That is being used by criminals around the world. Therefore, I should use it. It's literally as simple as that. And that is giving Monero aura. It's Tony Soprano. It's Tony Soprano walking into a restaurant. You're not fucking with Tony. You're like, oh shit, don't look at him. It's not like we're glorifying darknet markets, but we are bragging about the usage of Monero on there because it proves that it works. And Zcash not being used on there. And there's a lot of UX reasons for this, but it also comes down to just like how their culture is. That kind of compliant, snooty, tech-based culture. It is very repellent to the kind of rebellious counterculture types that Monero's full of, basically. You got a lot of these dirty cypherpunk types, such as myself. We like to think for ourselves. We don't like to be constrained in, guidelines or whatever. And I'm not saying Zcash doesn't have those types as well, but they present themselves in a very formalized, corporate, sterile way. And for people who are looking for like the bleeding edge, that's a repellent to them. So yeah, I mean, Zcash, they can keep trying to like convince people that they are better for whatever reasons. But at the end of the day, that adoption, that's what they need. And they can stay in denial about that. But Monero's aura comes from that darknet adoption. 100%. So even though Zcash may have interested cypherpunks in there, they're not committing to the hardcore cypherpunk philosophy. And that's really what separates Monero and Zcash, as well as Monero and all these other privacy projects. Now, before we wrap up, I do have to interject with some breaking news. Literally, I'm in the process of freaking editing this thing. And just within the past hour, Cubic has had not one, but 2 9-block reorgs, which is a lot. I think that's the largest we've ever seen. They also solved like 30 blocks in a row. Like, basically, the numbers are crazy. Now, the good news is it does seem like this might have just been like an isolated burst. Maybe they just got extremely lucky. But it is concerning nonetheless, and it's probably going to cause a lot of discussion. Now, the Monero Defense Fund has deployed hash rate, so that is happening right now as well. So it's a very fluid situation. But yeah, it's just unfortunately they have a lot of hash rate, and it's kind of I don't really know what to say here other than like we just have to get more people to start mining. And these defensive countermeasures that we were coming up with, we should probably implement them sooner than later. Specifically the DNS checkpoints. I know that can be implemented like pretty much overnight. It might need some more testing, but like we should probably consider that because that would help with this issue immediately. Even though it is a centralized solution, I think we do need a band-aid at this point. So I don't know. It's kind of, again, it's kind of hard to comment on this because like things are actively happening right now. But what's concerning is it does appear that while they did have 9 block reorgs, they could have gone over that if they had wanted to. I was in the Monero Research Lounge, and I guess they had very long reorgs, and they only did 9 blocks each time, not to trigger the 10 block double spend, concerns. So yeah, that is kind of alarming to say the least that they had that capacity to do that, even if it was only for a short period of time. They did have the hash rate to accomplish, such a thing. So I'm sure more people are going to be talking about this throughout the week. We'll see if there's any other, reorgs that do happen, but that is kind of breaking right now. So I didn't want to end the episode on at least with that, just because I was talking about the Monero Defense Fund earlier. It does seem like though after I deployed hash rate that the reorg attempts did die down. So maybe I had an impact. I don't know. But don't worry, guys. Monero is going to be here next week. And you know who else is going to be here next week? Me with Anti Moonboy news. So go to antimoonboy.com if you want to keep up to date with everything. And until next time, guys, I'll see you. Thanks for tuning in.